Now, from CBS 4 News, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Good morning, I'm Jim DeFede, and welcome to Facing South Florida. 2 weeks after Hurricane Irma engulfed Florida in wind and rain, we are still feeling its effects. Disasters like this one bring out the best and worst in people. They also reveal the chasm between rich and poor. This morning, we will look at both those truths. We start with the nursing home tragedy, where as many as 10 people died after the nursing home's air conditioner lost power in the storm. A criminal investigation into the rehabilitation center at Hollywood Hills continues. There is no shortage of blame and finger pointing, and we are going to explore all of it. Joining me this morning are two state senators dealing with the aftermath of the storm. Republican State Senator Anatiri Flores represents South Dade and the Florida Keys, while Democratic State Senator Gary Farmer represents parts of Broward County, including Hollywood, where the nursing home was rooted. Thank you both for joining me this morning. Before we turn to Hurricane Irma, I'm sure you both join me in extending our condolences and well wishes and thoughts and prayers for folks in Puerto Rico, as well as those in Mexico who are dealing with their own tragedies. It's been an incredible run the last few days, and we have such large Mexican communities here and Puerto Rican communities, and don't want to lose sight of that tragedy as well. But let's start with the one close to home here, the nursing home tragedy. And Gary, I want to start with you because this is your district. So talk to me first. I want to understand, when did you become aware that this was happening, and talk to me about how you sort of came up to speed on what was taking place at the rehabilitation center at Hollywood Hills.
Well, I became aware the day of the deaths. As the nursing home was being evacuated, I was contacted by some constituents. It turns out that my longtime financial advisor's mother was the second decedent at that facility, so very personal to me. I grew up in Hollywood, Florida, in addition to representing that district now, and so I became aware as the evacuation was happening, was able to arrive on scene later, and was just frankly horrified, Jim, at what I saw. The conditions in that nursing home, thinking about what those people went through for several days, not to put a callous turn on it, but these people were literally baked to death in an oven, and that did not have to happen. And the number of breakdowns that occurred to allow that to happen are numerous. They start with a system that I think has gaping flaws and holes in it, to the actual implementation or lack thereof of an emergency plan. And at the end of the day, the responsibility rests with that nursing home. They've got the statutory, contractual, and moral obligation to take care of the patients under their care, and they failed utterly, to the extent that it may be a criminal violation.
All right, Senator Flores and Terry, I would imagine you have two reactions when things like this happen. There's a human reaction, and then there's also, you put on your legislative hat and realize you're chair of Health and the Health Committee in terms of appropriations. This may be an issue that you have to deal with as well in Tallahassee. Talk to me a little bit about that.
No, it absolutely will be. In fact, we return to Tallahassee in just a couple of weeks, and this will be one of the first items on the agenda of the committee that I chair. On a personal level, it's unspeakable, it's horrible, and there is no excuse whatsoever that something like this should have ever happened. But now we get into, there's not just a criminal investigation that you spoke of, but there needs to be an administrative and an agency investigation, and I think there needs to be a legislative investigation as well, because there were so many ways that this went wrong, starting at the nursing home level, potentially, and I think probably at the administrative level with the Agency of Healthcare Administration.
Do you think there could be hearings?
I plan on it. Yeah, we plan on
fact-finding hearings, not just bill hearings.
Right. We plan on having some fact-finding hearings, more so to ensure that something like this doesn't happen again. Also to find out, is this something that maybe happened somewhere else, but just the media didn't quite report on it? Not through any fault, but just because it's something that is more widespread than simply this one issue. As one of the things that Gary mentioned is that, yes, the nursing homes are supposed to have, and they all do, they comply with the law that says that they need to have an emergency plan. obviously either those emergency plans are not sufficient enough, or they're just part of extra paperwork that no one's really looking at. And if that's the case, it's unacceptable.
Senator Farmer, one of the things that when we've spoken previously, you said this isn't really about Hurricane Irma.
Right.
This isn't, is it? Talk to me about that.
Not at all. And I think one thing we have to make sure we avoid is that this is just a generator issue, or this was just a lack of power issue. There are systemic breakdowns. There are systemic holes in our system. Senator Flores was just talking about the emergency plans. That's a paper shuffle. We now know that this particular nursing home was just copying and pasting its prior emergency plans with grammatical and syntax errors included. No meaningful assessment. Then who's actually inspecting these facilities? There's no physical inspection that goes on to ensure that they have the resources, staffing, equipment, and personnel to implement these plans.
Have the number of inspections, talk to me about, look, I don't want to make it overtly political, but have things changed during Governor Rick Scott? He's been given great credit for his response during the storm itself, but during the past few years, 7 years that he's been in office, I know that he fired the ombudsman that oversaw elder affairs, and has he cut back on the number of inspections? And talk to me about that.
Yes, under Governor Scott and prior to Governor Scott, we have for the last 2 decades deregulated the nursing home industry. We've reduced staffing levels, we've reduced accountability levels, we've done away with financial responsibility. Nursing homes don't have to have liability insurance, Jim. Every one of us has to have liability insurance for our cars, and nursing homes don't have to have insurance. When they don't have accountability, they lack responsibility. So yes, this has been a breakdown at every level. And ACA, do they need more resources? Maybe, but what are they doing, and who's taking control in an emergency situation? ACA told us in the very aftermath, when I was on the phone trying to get these patients placed, when we removed them from the home, they have to go somewhere. ACA was pointing the finger at Department of Health, saying in a state of emergency, Department of Health takes over. The right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. Nobody's actually taking care of these residents.
You already crafted a bill to introduce. Talk to me about some of the bullet points of that bill.
Yes. Well, you mentioned the ombudsman. The ombudsman office has been gutted. Their autonomy has been taken away. 4 ombudsmen have either resigned or been fired, and I believe it's the last 5 years. Okay, that's a watchdog group. That's our town crier that's out there looking to make sure our agencies are doing their job. When they don't have the resources or the authority to cry problem, that hurts our system. We need more accountability for the nursing homes. We need a greater authority for those ombudsmen. And we need to look at the whole regulatory system, physical inspections, not just paper shuffling.
Senator, Gary Farmer is a Democrat. You know, does a Democrat have a chance of passing a bill on this sort of matter and this sort of issue?
Well, I mean, I think that this is an issue that crosses party lines. Obviously, this is an issue that touches everybody across the entire state. And so, I mean, I think his bill, along with other bills that'll be filed, will receive its fair hearings. And I think the challenge that we have before us is to make sure that what we don't do is just something that's knee-jerk and then it's so comprehensive that then nobody does anything with it. So, you know, for example, this emergency plan that was put into statute, it probably was a great idea when it was put in, but now all it's become is just some paperwork, literally rubber stamping, nobody even looking at it. So I think that there needs to be two things. One is laws that are able to be implemented, that it's realistic that they're implemented, and then number 2, the resources to be able to enforce those laws. I think that second part is actually more important almost than the first part. We need enforcement because the laws exist on the books. Even with the issue of a generator, the laws exist on the book. The challenge is that nobody was there overseeing and enforcing.
Well, let's speak to the one entity whose name we have not spoken yet, which is Florida Power and Light.
Yeah.
Florida Power and Light goes by a certain emergency list that's put together in terms of priorities. I'm still a week and a half out. I'm still not clear how that emergency list gets generated, who's responsible for it, who oversees it. Should nursing homes, is this a legislative solution or is this a policy solution? Should nursing homes be automatically on a priority list for FP&L?
I think absolutely they should. You know, like I said earlier, there's enough blame to go around here for everybody, and I think the electric company has its share of blame as well.
You agree?
I agree absolutely. Right now, nursing homes and ALFs are not priority 1 restoration of power on that list. I was shocked to find that out.
73,000 people in nursing homes across the state of Florida, and at the time that the Hollywood Hills incident occurred, 150 other nursing homes still did not have power. We have to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about this and the Florida Keys recovery.